Greetings. Welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. On Conversation with Tony Mobley today, we're going to be talking about AI biases. Our panel today includes Rabbi David Paskin, Mr. Derek Mobley, and Mr. Kenn Jordan. Today is August 27, 2025. This is episode 33 of 2025. We're powered by Memo Live, and I want to thank the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley. And tonight, the team consists of Clylock Lopez Waterman only. We want to thank him for managing everything for us tonight. ConversationWithTonyMobley.com is a place in which you can view past episodes of Conversation with Tony Mobley, as well as this conversation that we're having right now. We also have, courtesy of Alex Lindsay and 090, a conversation queue question mechanism. It's called Mukana. There you can ask questions, and you can ask questions. Those questions can be voted up and down. That's right. We also are looking for questions from the YouTube chat. And so we ask that if you have a question about our conversation tonight, that you ask that question in Mukana or ask it in the YouTube chat. This, I believe, is a very important conversation, and I encourage you to ask your questions early. Now we're going to get right into it, and we're going to ask our guests to introduce themselves and give us a brief bio of who you are. And so we're going to start with Rabbi David Paskin. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hello, sir. Welcome to you. Good to be here. I'm David, and I have fallen deep into the AI well, or hole, or whatever you want to call it. But I am embracing every aspect of it. I'm loving it. I'm getting frustrated with it, and I'm fine. I have reached the point, Tony, where it is genuinely changing the way I work. I would say just recently, it's genuinely changing the way that I work. So I am all in and looking forward to this conversation tonight. That is, I hope, going to challenge some of that. That's why I'm here. I love being challenged.
Well, thank you so much, sir. We're going to go to Mr. Kenn Jordan.
Good evening, Tony.
Good evening.
Hi, yes, back again on this show. I suppose as a company work for, we've been all in on AI for a while. What we do is we make your online presence more profitable by building digital solutions to help with that. And our use of AI and generative AI is being made quite a change for what we do and how we produce our content. And this discussion is quite important because being very early adopter with AI, we have seen the change in its bias, as the title of the show is, and we've made, we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we're definitely going to take a deeper dive into some of the things that you have experienced as a person who has used it exclusively over several years. So we definitely want to hear about that. Now we're going to talk to the youngest member of our panel tonight, and I know he's the youngest member of the panel because he happens to be my youngest brother, Mr. Derek Mobley.
Not too young, I guess, but glad to be here. Appreciate the invite to the panel tonight. I long-term financial analyst, former commercial lender, former longtime banker, who turned to basically came to a point in my life where I needed to pivot and got into the IT world, decided to go back to school for network systems administration, finished that program, and then jumped into the IT field from that point. So I definitely have the least amount of experience as compared to the esteemed panel here in terms of IT, but definitely can relate to the impact of AI. It's definitely had a major impact on my life, and I definitely can see how it's going to impact the world moving forward in many ways.
Well, thank you so much, sir. And glad to have you on the panel. I'm indeed a very happy camper in terms of my panel members. I am excited about it. So the next question is, do you have a definition of AI biases that you will share with us? We're going to go to Ken Jordan first.
Yeah, but we were very early. I said earlier, we were a very early adopter using AI, and we were using, I think, first of all, mainly kind of on the generative AI image generation, so using tools like Midjourney and getting it to represent us and our clients correctly was challenging initially with then, and it took kind of a lot of prompting and a lot of training to get it to generate images that were acceptable for us and our client base. So, but it was, I suppose it was also a main reason why we were so early to fully adopt and use it was because we recognized that it's the training data that it had, it didn't have enough diversity to be able to produce that. So we had to input more into it. And I think a very positive point for this now going forward is that because these systems are more open and more available to a bigger and diverse audience, because we all have biases, that it comes just from our own upbringing and experience, and we bring that to the work and stuff that we produce. And so it's not unexpected or unusual that these models have a bias, because if it was very much a kind of a monoculture that helped to produce them, their experience were all very was similar, so their inputs were similar, and they just didn't have. It wasn't through any negative reasons or deliberately done in a way that things were produced in that that were outputting those results. They were using either training data that was old or originally had negative biases in them that needed to be updated. But with the more diverse audience using these tools and putting in our own biases, you were getting a much more open and general, more acceptable delivery. Now, obviously, there's still a long way to go. There's still a number of systems that are still using old training data. But the more open solutions that there are, the more then that we as an audience can input and correct those issues that we see and find, and put our own experience and own data in to get it to feed a more get a more diverse result from it.
Thank you, sir. Uh, Derek Mobley, do you have a definition of AI biases that you will share with us?
Well, AI, as far as how it has impacted me personally, has been on the level of ageism. There seems to be some bias, and there's always has been a bias in the IT arena in terms of age. Pretty much you kind of age out at age 40 in the IT arena. Once you get beyond that, it seems as if you're definitely not valued as much as far as your experiences, as far as what you bring to the table. And I think due to the current economic status of just the nature of corporations now and how economics work, it just makes more sense for companies to go with a younger talent to obviously pay lower salaries and things of that nature. So for me, my experience has been quite difficult in terms of employment opportunities since ATS and some of these other programs that have come out as of late that screen resumes and they look for certain things. And one of the things that we have found is that there is historical data that the algorithms look at. And unfortunately, due to the fact that there has been some biases in the past, that's now kind of being built upon that foundation, the current status of AI, which is utilizing, outmoded details as far as diversity goes. So it's definitely something that not only impacts me, but impact anyone that gets above a certain age. We all grow older. So one of the things that's guaranteed is that we all will grow older. We're all going to be impacted. And I know I'm not the only one that has definitely encountered that. I'm involved in a novel lawsuit class action that has impacted one of the major software companies in the country that potentially can impact hundreds of thousands, not millions of individual candidates who have struggled with trying to gain gainful employment after the age of 40. So that's something that, again, has directly impacted me in terms of AI. And my goal is to hopefully that we get to a point where we can put in some guardrails in place to limit the possibility that AI can indirectly or inadvertently discriminate against people, and that people should get a fair opportunity as long as they bring the skill set and get a fair shot to at least apply for a position. Not saying that they should be guaranteed a job, but they should at least, if you qualify for the position, you should be garnered the opportunity to at least compete for the particular role.
Thank you, sir. Rabbi David Paskin.
I don't, I don't, I'm not sure that I have any deep insights to offer on, the science of AI bias. But here's what I'll offer. And that is that AI is a mirror more than anything. It shows us who we are. And so, yes, we need to put in safety measures. We need to call on the government to put in guardrails. We need to be thoughtful and careful when we're using AI. And on a much deeper, and I would argue more, I don't want to say profound, but equally at least important level, we need to realize that it is showing us who we are. And if it makes us uncomfortable to see it outside of ourselves, just imagine how uncomfortable we might be when we realize that it is within us as well. And so the biases that exist in AI cannot exist unless, and Kenn, I think, sort of got at this. I'm not suggesting that people are intentionally programming biases, but as a reflection of humanity and the ways in which we've fallen short, it's doing a really good job of showing us exactly who we are.
Wow.
Yeah, can I just
Go ahead,
count
Dave.
just
Go ahead, Kenn.
one small part of what David just said there? I would disagree about making governments put rules in place on this. If you want, mainly because I believe, there is deliberate bias in certain governments. So having a government regulation on AI is, to me, the worst type of regulation to be put in. Having the AI be more open source and more readily available to all is the best regulation that you can have, because that then opens it up to our own public scrutiny. When we use it, regular people use it and see, oh, hold on, this isn't right, and they raise those issues, and then those issues get addressed. But governments have their own agenda, and having government regulation on these tools, we're already seeing it in certain districts and areas where, that's the last organization that you want. Even though government should reflect, government does reflect, well, in the Western world anyway, what we choose. So at times it's our own fault. We get the government we deserve because that's down to us voting for that. But they are some of the worst regulators, in my opinion, to be in charge of this, because negative biases are part of their build up. So having them regulate this tool, I think, would be we will see more problems than less problems.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think that just piggybacking on what everyone has said, it is indeed a mirror of who we are in terms of what's put in AI, and also the fact that we often talk about in this community that we are part of, about garbage in, then you get garbage out, and that is I think so true in terms of what we are dealing with AI. And don't get me wrong, I am an Apple, not an Apple. Well, I'm an Apple fanboy, but I'm also an AI fanboy, in that I really like the interactions with AI. But I am I am reminded very often in using AI that I have to be really sort of specific about my prompts. Otherwise, I get something that I'm really not particularly wanting. And so I encourage those who are listening to, number one, ask a question about this topic that we have tonight. Ask a question about it. But also, if you choose not to ask a question about it, I encourage you to participate in this AI, I'm going to say revolution, um, and put your 2 cents in terms of asking questions, and I would encourage you not to use it as a Google. uh, don't use it in that way. We are at a sort of tipping point when it comes to AI, that you are able to kind of really create the images that you want, create the documents that you want. You can do so many things, and a lot of it is free. Well, I think Kenn would say to me, well, it's not free. That you're giving something up. You're giving up data, or you're giving something up. But there is a low point to entry. And so I encourage people who are listening and watching that this is a time to embrace it, where you can put in those things that are important to you, and that you can shift those things that are important in your AI dialogue or questions or comments. And the next question is, are there AI platforms that are better at preventing biases than others? And so we're going to start with Derek Mobley.
I'm going to probably defer on this one
Okay.
because
All
I,
right.
I I can't say that I personally had found any research that kind of lends to that. But there is ongoing efforts to make the data sets and things of that nature more diverse to more or less reflect the actual population versus just a small subgroup or a small segment of the demographics. Whereas as of right now, a lot of the data sets and data and algorithms are coded and designed by people who are very similar to each other. And that, in effect, is something that I know needs to change. And I did see some things that are out there. They're looking to try to diversify that data set and algorithm and the people who actually code these so that the results look more like the population versus just a subset of the demographic profile of the country or the world. And one of the things I want to piggyback on as far as what Ken said earlier, the guardrail thing, I think, is even more crucial now since the fact that AI is more available. And as you mentioned, Tony, the low barrier of entry. It could be, people, like you said, people can create any kind of documents and any kind of video. They can manipulate a lot of things to the point where it's now very, very realistic. So I think even more now is important to understand what those guardrails are. And one of the things that I think is concerning, particularly as it pertains to my case, is we've been trying to gain access to, the black box, the infamous black box, to really understand what goes into the algorithm. Therefore, it can be verified and audited to ensure that it's not biased in any way. The company, the defendant claims that they have some audits in place that, in effect, have verified that it is not biased. I've not seen that, and I don't think that my attorneys have seen that. So therefore, if there is auditing out there, I think it definitely needs to be more of a standard versus more of an option for a lot of these large companies.
Thank you for that. Rabbi David Paskin.
I just wanted to, the truth is that all of these LLMs, all of these models have some elements of bias in them. And there have been a number of studies that have looked into this. So in a recent study, this was from the Stanford News, it looked like, this is pre ChatGPT 5. ChatGPT 4.0 had less bias than Meta AI or Grok. Having said that, they also have created tests, or I don't know, I'm not sure what they would call it. Looking for the word here. Is it tests? I guess it is tests that they put the AIs through so that they can then measure or grade the amount of bias that it has. And both language models, text to image AI models, they all, in different ways, don't get it right. But again, they are us. We also don't get it right. And while I could not agree more with Ken, your suggestion that government is probably the worst at doing the hard work of setting those guardrails, I'm pretty convinced that leaving it up to the companies themselves that have a fiduciary responsibility to make money for their shareholders, I feel convinced that isn't the right way. So I don't know how to do that work, but as Derek, as you said, it's absolutely vital that we take these challenges seriously.
Kenn?
Well, yeah. It's funny that Meta, who are in one way is one of the most they released the Llama, the models that they've made open source. So that means I think Derek was talking about the infamous the what is the code behind it. They made it open source, so the algorithms that they were using were open, so you could see what they were, and the issues that raised, because now it was open, and then you can input your result and see, well, why did it produce that answer? it would then it grew and got fixed and got changed because open source is the only way to see what the algorithm that's behind it. That's where the where those issues can come in, have arisen, and that's what makes the change. So I believe the solution is that those models are made open source so that we all can put in our own questions and bias. A problem with a lot of these training sets that are used to determine either how well a model does or how biased it is one way or another is when you properly examine those training sets, a lot of the answers and things in those training sets are actually wrong because they were, again, worked from a either using old data and old biases or question or answers are actually incorrect. So, and be and what that allows companies to do is to cherry pick what model they use to determine how well it is. So the only true way of getting better results or understanding which model works best in your use case is by you using them, you inputting your data and seeing those results, and not rely on any benchmarking, because the benchmarks are bias in themselves. So, but as I said, the only true way of of fixing this, I believe, is by them being open and allowing us to examine and put light on those areas so that they can be addressed. And yes, the question that David raised about these companies policing themselves, and it is understandable why that shouldn't is an issue. But the more that they are open to the market, the more that if it is shown that, look, this is producing inaccurate results, they change those because it does affect their market value. As much as you might like or dislike the market is pretty much almost color blind in that it works on what is going to determine to be the most that can make me the most profit. And if there is negative news on something that's doing, or it's been shown, look, this isn't producing good stuff, will eventually have a direct effect on that market value, and that's why they do make those changes and and fix those things. That is the it is not the ideal way. You would ideally think you would like your government representative to be the arbiter of that and change. But unfortunately, we have seen forever in that place that they can be manipulated until we have a different system of funding that. Anyway, that's a totally different angle. But the market does determine that change. I mean, look at when the Chinese model was released and open to the public. The stock value
Deep Seek, yeah.
of other um, of other closed systems dropped because, look, they produced a model that was on a par or maybe slightly below par some of the paid for models, but produced those good results. So
Yeah.
it demonstrates that the the market is all about what they believe
Yeah.
will make money,
Yeah,
as they should.
I think that based on what has already been said tonight, that we in a way we're really sort of even in a crisis with AI, because you think about the biases, you think about hallucinations. So that but sort of brings us into the next question. what are the safeguards that we all should be using when it comes to AI? How do you how do you what are your resources in terms of verifying the information that you get from AI? What are some of the safeguards that you use in using AI with biases, with hallucinations? We're going to start with Rabbi David Paskin.
Well, so I want to address that, and at the same time, I want to push back a little bit. And I think that maybe I'm just the negative Nelly here, but I think, boy, Ken, I have a much more generous view of society than I think I do. I look at social media and how social media thrives, and the amount of money that Facebook makes, or that all these social media companies make, it grows exponentially when there's ugliness, when there's strife, when there's contention, right? When all those ugly parts of us come out. And so I'm not entirely convinced that the market will do right by us. Having said that, the challenge, Tony, I think, in some ways, with fact-checking AI for bias is, again, the fact that it is a mirror. And so very often it is presenting, not all the time, but in some cases, it is presenting biases because it has learned about those biases from reputable sources. So, for example, one of my favorite parts of these AI tools now is how they link to their sources. So if you ask ChatGPT a question, very often, and if you don't get it, you can certainly ask for it, it will give you specific links after each section, after each quote, after each bullet point, whatever. Here's where I got this information. You can then go to those sources and you can fact check it. You can bias check it. Don't be surprised when you see the exact same bias in that source material.
Right. Yeah.
They really interesting point. The market I see is very two different things to what you think. Because agreed, social media isn't the marketplace. Social media thrives on negative news. Totally agree. And I know that because, that's what I work in, that's what I produce. So I know how the social media markets work. But the actual stock market, in terms of being that judge, because yes, yeah, because I would always recommend everybody to lessen their use of social media, because it is a total, it is not a reflection of who we are. We might think it is, but it isn't. It is designed to keep you on that social platform. And the best way of doing that is by putting up things where you either totally agree and love it and want more of it, or totally disagree and argue with it and want more of that. The easiest thing is to keep off it and produce your own content, but that's a whole other show. I know, Tony, we've already done one based on that, but that isn't the market. That truly isn't the market. It is, because it isn't a reflection of us, because if it was, it wouldn't be the kind of, well, cesspool is a probably pleasant term of what it actually is, because it isn't designed to be that. It is designed to keep you on that platform, and it will keep you on there whatever way. And the algorithm is designed to keep you there, whether it's via negative news, which is most of the time, because that's what you get a reaction from. You read a story that just sounds, oh, that's terrible, and you dive deeper into it, and it's that's how social media works, but it's not how the market works. Those are two very different models. And I agree, social media isn't a place to go for any real because unfortunately most people get their news through social media, and that news it is designed to be biased because that's what keeps you engaged on those platforms. And so it isn't a thing to, you know it isn't a great reflection of us, because it actually isn't.
It's a microcosm of the world or the communities, because like you said, that it just doesn't represent the majority of people. It's those people who made the decision that they want to share this content. And as you say, they, whether it's good or whether it's bad, they are going to interact with it. And uh, I know where your heart is in terms of this kind of thing, that it's important for people to create their own websites and push people to their websites where they are really trying to impart information that is beneficial and helpful. We have a question from Clarlock Lopez Waterman from New Mexico. How about the biases and surrounding the energy use of AI? Will the heavy energy used to exaggerate culture and social economic bias? We're going to start with
Wait, I
Derek
need you to
Mobley.
read that. I need you to read that one more time.
Okay. How about the biases and surrounding the energy use of AI? Will this heavy energy use exaggerate culture and social economic bias?
Is he referring to actual energy use, as in fossil fuels and things like that?
I don't think so. I think he's talking about the energy of people, the enthusiasm, or um, he's talking about fossil fuels.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You want to go ahead, Rabbi?
Well, I mean, it is very. I'll just speak for myself. I find, and we've talked about this before, Tony, that it is very difficult. I'm a very lucky person. Just economically, I mean, I've had my struggles, but generally speaking, I'm a very lucky person. And the joke about first world problems, that's all I've got are first world problems. And so I don't often think about the costs of all of this, and the way that the negative impact that those costs can have on those less fortunate than me. But that's a real thing. That's a real thing. The way that these tools burn fossil fuels, impact the environment, require things that not everyone has access to. I mean, lots of folks do. 700 million weekly users, not bad. But nonetheless, there are inequities and issues of access and real impacts that the environmental, particularly around environment, that these tools have. And I don't know that that impacts bias, but it certainly impacts the people using these technologies.
Definitely. I talk very often about the fact that there are digital deserts even in the same cities, and the fact that we are using energy when we use AI and we say thank you. That's not something that we need to do, but we do it anyway. And it's just we're burning up energy in doing that. Um, uh, Ken, you want to talk about this question?
Yeah, I think well, I'll just say it anyway, because yeah, the energy usage of these models is probably 1 to 1.5% of worldwide energy uses is through these models. So it's an insignificant number in comparison to the other wasteful energy use that have. And I'm afraid to say, that if my friends across the pond, I'm based in Ireland, I'm in Europe on the other side, because you don't really pay true prices for your energy use. The price, the subsidies that the government has put on what you call gasoline or what we call petrol fuel is unbelievable high. When you talk about what we pay, how much we have to pay for a kilowatt of energy to the average price of an American pays, is laughable. I live here in Ireland, and we have the highest prices per kilowatt of energy use that there is. But when you look at the amount of, so the negative story about AI and using the amount of energy it uses, it does use a significant amount of energy. I said 1.5% of global usage is comes from that. But your whole energy use model in the US is what the problem is. Your subsidies on fossil fuels rather than investment in clean energy. It is, people complain so about China and the amount of energy it's using, but but America is the most polluting of the environment. Forget whether you believe in climate change or whatever, even if you don't, but your burning of fuels and the subsidies you put behind those companies, again, that's a whole other subject and thing. And to kind of saying, oh well, AI is a big problem, and that all the fuel it's using, your whole energy model is what the problem is. And if that was addressed and you invested more in cleaner energy, then that wouldn't be an issue. But as I said, we can talk about
So,
politics on Tony's show, so it's a bit different than normal.
well, you can talk about politics on this show, so that's fine. Before I go to Derek, and I just want to reinforce what you said, Ken, and that it's really not about the AI use. It's about the use of energy in general in terms of the fossil fuel. That that's something that we really need to think about. Because when I read this question, I really was thinking about the extra stuff that we say to the AI that we don't need to say, and as you have pointed out, that's not really a thing in terms of what we're really doing. Derek, what do you think?
Um, I'm starting to see a pattern here, and I think the pattern is that uh, you know AI seems to create this indirect or disparate type of bias. And going back to the environment question, recently there have been a uproar, I believe, just outside of Memphis or near Memphis, where there's a neighborhood that's being impacted by one of the largest, I guess, data centers that we have, and other areas and communities who typically tend to be minority or disadvantaged communities seem to be where some of these high pollutant type centers are popping up. So it just seems as if there is some profit to bias in terms of like the company that I'm in the process of suing, in terms of just how the placement of these data centers to try to support the growth of AI. It's just interesting how it seems as if somehow, whether it's direct, but typically seem to be indirect, there's this bias as it pertains to or linked directly to AI. So I just think it's kind of interesting across the board. There seem to be some serious concerns that need to be addressed and looked at, evaluated, and we need to ensure that we are being more consistent in terms of fairness, in terms of how we place these data centers, And as Ken spoke to earlier, the lack of focus on clean energy. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the current attitude of our current climate politically in this country. And I'm a big environmental guy. I even can't stand litter. I think litter is right below theft and murder. So so to me, I'm very huge on protecting the environment. And to recently read about the fact that China is now have designed a cooling process by putting the data centers underwater in our oceans. And of course, there's going to be some questions as to what's the impact of that to our wildlife, and how it might even affect the food supply. I'm a pescatarian, so I'm even more concerned about having a data center being cooled by the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. So these are all things that we need to seriously sit down and look at and evaluate. And I think there needs to be a little more honest on corporations and even governments to, again, put some type of guardrails in place to protect all of us.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have a question from Liberty White. The question is, what countries do you think will lead in the regulation in the next 2 to 3 years in creating spaces or responsible AI? And we're going to go back to Derek. What do you think?
I think it might be us. and I say that simply because of the impact, potential impact of my ongoing case. Again, this is a case that could potentially impact, millions of people, millions of job candidates, current, former, and every HR, company, every HR, expert that's out there right now are really honing in on this particular case, because there is concern that this is kind of like uncharted territory. And because of the significant prolific use of this software with this particular company as well as others, is impacting, like I said, millions of people. Well over tens of thousands of companies are using AI in order to pre-screen candidates. And of course, a lot of the AI is utilizing, bad data, or previously biased data, and continues to learn from that data, or it can even look at historical patterns of a company and how they previously hired. And if they previously hired only a certain demographic, then the AI is going to learn that, hey, this is what this particular client is looking for. Therefore, it's going to reproduce that and continue to glean from that, and it only grows from there. So I think it might be us. And I think a lot of it, I'm not trying to be braggadocious, but I think a lot of it may happen simply because I have brought this case to the forefront.
Thank you for that. Rabbi?
Again, boy, I wish I had as much faith as you all do. Derek, I think you're right in that ultimately any legislation that matters and that has a chance of impacting AI broadly around the world is going to come out of the United States. I think you're right about that, because I think that the United States, for better or worse, and you could argue either, is a world leader in many ways. I don't think that we will come up with the right regulations or the right guardrails. I think we will be inspired by others. In Australia, the Human Rights Commissioner talks about the need for urgent regulation. In other countries, they're talking about it. In our country, unfortunately, our president is just ignoring it and lifting all restrictions on AI. So I don't think it will be born here, but I think that it will take the United States to push it around the world, to make it something that is collective and accepted by most people, or by most countries, I should say.
Kenn?
Yeah, I have a total counter view to that. Maybe it's because I am across the pond, and um, yeah, the countries that whoever regulates or tries to regulate AI more, they will be the losers in this. It's not, you cannot regulate something that is now open to everyone. Because if you decide to regulate something, others, countries decide, well, we won't. And therefore, a good analogy for this, and this kind of almost goes to Derek's point. Companies who have been strongly using AI have only 40% of them have seen any growth in their bottom line by using it. Counter to that, their employees who use their own AI have seen a 90% growth in their output. So it isn't, so yes, these company regulated models which have been built, companies who are using that aren't seeing, as I said, the majority of them aren't seeing any increase. Individuals who are using their own models or their own, they are seeing an increase. So that's where that disconnect is, because yes, those company-wide models are are old. They're using old data, wrong data, and producing poor results. Back to the liberties regulation question. I'm not talking as if Europe is that great bastion of it, because we produce some of the worst, the most ridiculous legislation there is. But you try to legislate on this, and other countries, China is the main one, will produce models. Like, for example, the restriction on copyright that was put in place to kind of say you can't copy those images. You just choose a Chinese model which doesn't have any of those restrictions, apart from obviously Chinese. If you're trying to put something anti-Chinese into it, it wouldn't work. But they're open source, their models, so you could take their models and remove that restriction. So they will counter it, and the market will react, and that will affect what you see on those models. So trying to regulate this, especially when your governments are trying to do it, if you believe that the US will try to, they will, because their political system, it tries to encourage that, will have a negative effect for companies who are using those models, because they will follow those regulations, but the individuals won't, because you'll just choose whatever the best model is to produce you the best results. And if it means that comes from China, so be it. That's what you will use, because they won't have those restrictions. So trying to regulate it is, the countries that do it, or try to put the most regulation in, will have the worst effect, because those models will not work as well as the ones which aren't. Open source is the only true regulator of this, and that's what I believe. And the market will determine it, because the market will determine what those companies do, because the bottom line is what affects them, not the regulation on that. If their market share drops and their value in the market drops, that's what will make them to change, not any false regulation that most governments, as Alex Lindley said, they can't even use an email. You're trying to expect them to come up with a regulation for using AI. They can't even spell AI. So they are the worst ones to try to regulate it. It is it being open source and us using it. That's why I encourage everybody to use it, because put in your own biases into it to level that playing field. Corporations who are using corporate models, as I said, less than 40% of them are seeing any positive return in using it, but their employees are seeing, 90% of their employees are seeing benefits to them using their own models rather than the company-based ones.
Wow. We want to thank Liberty for that question. We have a question from Roscoe Jones from Madison, Indiana. Generative AI, predictive AI, conversational AI, multimodal AI, traditional AI, large language models. What other types of AI do you see definitions for, and do you accept these labels? Um, Ken?
But those labels, AI as a label, is put onto everything because, again, I go back to the market, because that increases their market value. You see two companies. Here's an example. OpenAI, the two of the founders who tried who originally dismissed Sam Altman, and then they left OpenAI. Both two of them have started up their own AI companies. One is worth 32 billion, the other worth 12 billion. They have not produced any product, but they have AI in their name, and they used to run an AI company, and that's their valuation. So this AI label, which people slap onto everything, is purely because if you do, you will get investment and your value goes up. Machine learning, which is, I suppose, a term that I prefer to use, which has been around before, we've seen this growth of what we would call AI. Machine learning has been around for years. Machine learning has been in our iPhones. Every time you take a photo with it, it's using machine learning to enhance those photos. Spell checkers like Grammarly and stuff. Those are what one way you can say, but they're machine learning. We've been using it in our tools all the time. So yes, the label that and the more I think about it, the more I should really need to start up as an AI company to get a few billions from these. Literally, people who just don't understand what it is. You stick that label on it, and you will earn money. So no, I don't think with the labels that it's there, but it is comes into our language now. It's easier to people understand what it is when you say it, but it's the reality of how much it's a definition that isn't doesn't really have a, a, a proper definition. So machine learning is a much closer thing to it, but we call it AI, but it's a label. It's a label put on there to make money in the market.
All right, thank you. Rabbi.
Just ditto what Ken said, 100%. I actually thought that one of Apple's smartest moves was calling their tool AI, Apple Intelligence. I just now, I mean, they have no tool, and it doesn't. It's not even a thing. But from a marketing perspective, I actually thought that was really quite brilliant. Apple Intelligence, AI. And Ken's exactly right. That's why they launched a nothing burger, because they didn't really have a choice. Everyone's talking about AI. You have to have AI. There is nothing that frustrates me more than tools that claim to have good AI embedded and really don't. I don't need any more of those. But I was taken, and I just want to hit on something that Kenn said, the idea of teaching your AI tool your biases. That's quite interesting to me, that we don't have to buy into the world's bias. We can create our own, and chat and OpenAI, excuse me, just what do they call the OSS models? Are those the ones that you can host yourself, where you can literally train your own model? I mean, we can do that a little bit. We can give it context, and we can give it personalization, and it can change the color of your chatbot and things like that. But if you really want to do this well, and I imagine that this will become the norm, that we can all really have our own unique biased to us artificial intelligence. I think that's just a fascinating way to think about it.
Is that what GPTs are, basically? I'm asking.
I would
I'm
no,
asking you all.
I would, you know, um, the the large language models that you can run locally, the only issue that those have is that you're not feeding back. We need more people to be using these these models that are out there, you know, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini's model, which is, you know, what Google have released, the the um, the latest image generator
The
is an
banana.
amazing tool. Yeah,
What
yeah.
is it?
What was well,
Smart
it
banana.
was Nana Banana was their code name behind it, but actually, I think that name's going to stick, even
Yeah,
though
everyone
Google
loves it.
haven't
Nano
pooped
banana.
Google on that. But that should be a real wake up call to anyone using Photoshop. I mean, it's you know, why are you paying for a subscription when this model is free that they're giving away? It's going to be a big. It's totally free to everybody to use. So, you know, I encourage you to use those models, to use those general models. The large language models that you can run locally are quite poor, to be honest, unless you have a well, the best computers to do it on are actual Macs because they're actually cheaper to run, and the machine learning has been built into the the M series of chipsets for ages. So unless you bought a big stack of those, you know, literally, say, because I've got stacked beside, you know, literally tens of thousands of dollars worth of those stacked together to run a model, you know, you're not, that's still not nowhere near as good as the cloud-based ones. And everything you put in there is totally private, and you can, you know, but I would encourage you to put your, you know, using the more general open ones that everyone else uses, because by you training those, they do feed through. We have seen it. I mean, because the amount of training we put into us, literally hundreds of man hours to produce of input we put in to affect those models to get them to produce better results that we can output, and we all need to be putting that into it, our own biases into those models that are out there, because that's what helps to level out that playing field and highlights even more those company models that Derek's talking about that has those biases because they're using old data, or, you know, because it's like there's a big that you know that I think Amazon, when Amazon were doing using AI to do look through um, CVs to kind of quickly kind of surf through. Problem was that, you know, if you had a white sounding name, they were more biased to it. If you were a woman, they were more biased against you because the data that they used was based from 2015, and it was a terrible data set that was so biased because of the data that they put in. But they quickly recognized that, and the negative news that brought on them, you know, means that these companies do change. And so they change through that negativity because it affects their market model, because the market looks at those needles. The market changes obviously, you know, every day. There's any slight bit of negative news and a 5% drop in some value, but those are the needle movers that change those companies and change their 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 output, or they get them to fix those problems, because, you know, because why that moves the needle is because advertisers who paying for all of this, who are the reason behind those companies, they want to be seen to be right or seen to be correct and doing things correctly, and they will jump ship from any model or anything that's out there that does seem to be, hold on, that's, you know, people are railing against this, we don't want our advertisers, they're not doing it out of any goodness of their
Yeah,
heart. They're doing it
not
out
not
of
out of any
money.
generosity. Not
No,
out of any
not out of
generosity.
generosity at all.
No,
Purely for the, yeah. So
for
they
profit.
will jump for profit. So they will move on that and say, "Oh, look how good we are. We're no longer supporting this. So you can buy more
Yeah.
of our products." But those are the only things that these companies see and change. And so the more that that the general public uses this and says what they see, and they say, "Oh, this is wrong, or this is weird, this look how terrible this is." Those are things that will actually change more than anything else. We
So
have that power, and we
yeah,
always
I'm
have.
gleaning from you and from the other panel members that again, the thing is that as many of us as possible, regardless to our diversity, and let me say it this way, in spite of our diversity, we should be embracing AI models and inputting as much, using it as much as possible in order for it to really have a view that is reflective of Rabbi David Paskin's mirror, and that's kind of where we are. Before we get to the last couple of questions, Derek, did you want to say something on this topic?
There's no way I could follow Ken on that. That was so well put. I just, it's interesting. He had that counterintuitive thought about inputting our own biases to level the playing field. And I think part of that needs to be an effort to create AI that learns from the bias to create the antithesis of that bias. So I would love to see something like that. So maybe that'll be me. That'll make that happen. Who knows?
That could be you. That could be you. We're down to the last few questions. We are not going to get to every question that we had tonight, and I apologize to our audience for that. Um, what is the next thing for the panel members? And we need you to be really brief. We're going to go with Derek first.
Next thing for me is wait and see. We're just waiting for the outcome of this case. Fortunately, we've had a judge who appears to have been very fair regarding both sides, plaintiff as well as the defendant's side. So there's definitely no bias on her part, at least as far as how she's handling or managing the case. So it's a matter of seeing how that plays out. And I'm real curious to see, because most people just had a lot of doubts, especially a lot of people in the HR world had a lot of doubts that will go anywhere, and they're surprised that we're at this point. I'm just going to wait and see how that pans out.
I want to say congratulations to you that it's gotten this far, Rabbi David Paskin.
I'm vibe coding all the time. That's what I'm doing now. I'm using AI to build real tools that I'm using every day, and it works. It works. It's fantastic. That's what I'm doing next.
That's exciting. You want to talk about tomorrow's rundown?
Sure. Well, tomorrow I gave Tony homework, and I said, and everyone else on the panel, I asked them, what is a technology that has absolutely changed their life? So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So bring your technologies and throw them into the chat. We can talk about those also.
Kenn.
Oh, for me, I'm like David, in a very fortunate position that for me, it's stepping away from all this tech that you see around me that I love and being out in nature. Like today, we're lucky we live where we live here. We have a big forest behind us that we can go in and explore. And it means that my use of these AI tools have allowed me to step away from all of this tech and be outside and enjoy nature. So I encourage you, you can't get it more tech than me, but stepping out from it and going out into nature, um, it is so freeing for the mind and positive energy that you get out by being out there. So I'm just very glad that I'm in a position that we can enable that, and that's because of AI is such a great productive tool for us that it means that I'm making now more free time for myself to go out and enjoy the beautiful countryside that I live in here.
Fantastic. One word answer. Are you still swimming in the ocean?
No, I went. We're now 20 odd minutes away, which isn't that far, but when you live in Ireland, it feels like an eternity away because I used to be able to walk to the beach. But what I have now, I have a enormous forest behind me that every morning and every opportunity I get, I go out and explore and hike in those mountains. But I go about once every fortnight or so. I should go more. And you bring that up, I shall go tomorrow morning, or this morning
Right.
actually, for me, because it's 2 in the morning here.
Fantastic. Thank you again for being here. Final question. You're speaking to the world. What do you want the world to know? We're going to go with Rabbi David Paskin.
Oh, that's not fair. About this topic, I want the world to know that we can do better.
I like that. Derek?
I guess I want the world to know that AI can be our greatest asset or our worst enemy, and hoping for the former.
Thank you. Kenn?
I want the world to know that just take some time and if you can, you can switch off your social channels and go outside and take a walk. That's so much more beneficial to you. Or go and talk to your neighbor and see what you can do for help them. You will feel so much better than that amount of cat videos you watch on your YouTube feed. That's a far more positive impact than any social media as you going out and interfacing directly with nature and with other people. So I encourage you to do that.
Thank you all so much for being here with me. Apologies to our audience because we did not get to all the questions. I want to say thank you, all of those of you who were able to tune in, and maybe there'll be a part 2. We'll see if we can get our guests to come back again. Conversation with Tony Mobley.com is our website. There you can find past conversations where we have shared conversations like this on a variety of different subjects. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by a valued audiovisual professional who meet daily on office hours global. And I have to make a caveat. Conversation with Tony Mobley is kind of flying solo right now. And if you are interested in supporting Conversation with Tony Mobley by participating in learning how Mimo Live works, some of the other tools that we're using, we are definitely receptive to that. You can put a note in on our Conversation with Tony Mobley website. Also on our Conversation with Tony Mobley website, there are places where you can make donations to Conversations with Tony Mobley. You can make a monthly donation. You can make a yearly donation. It's up to you. One-time donation. We're looking for continued support. We want to keep doing what we're doing in terms of providing a voice for people to share conversations that are authentic. That is what we're about. We're about having authentic conversations about a variety of things, and we have conversations with real people. Again, I want to thank my guests for being here with me today. We're going to say good night, God bless, and in Kenn's case, good morning. Take care, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.